There is a moment that arrives quietly in most lives. It doesn't come with drama. It doesn't announce itself. There is no clear before and after. It often happens late at night. Or during a pause in conversation. Or in the middle of a routine day when something simply stops working. And in that moment, a realization settles in. No one is coming. No rescue. No intervention. No sudden alignment of circumstances that relieves you of deciding. At first, this realization feels heavy. It can feel like abandonment. Like being overlooked. Like being left behind. But that interpretation is incomplete. Because what is actually happening in that moment is not loss. It is a transfer of power. Most people live for years inside an invisible assumption. That if things become difficult enough, something will step in. A person will notice. An opportunity will appear. A system will adjust. A door will open. We grow up surrounded by intervention. Mistakes are corrected. Deadlines are extended. Consequences are softened. Explanations arrive before pressure becomes overwhelming. This is not malicious. It is not a flaw in intention. It is care. But care, repeated without withdrawal, trains something subtle and dangerous. The belief that struggle has a ceiling. That discomfort will not be allowed to continue indefinitely. That someone is monitoring closely enough to stop the fall. And that belief changes how people move through the world. They hesitate longer. They tolerate more than they should. They delay decisions they already know they need to make. Not because they are weak. But because they are waiting. Waiting for confirmation. Waiting for permission. Waiting for reassurance that acting alone is justified. The illusion of rescue is one of the strongest forces keeping people motionless. Because as long as rescue feels possible, action feels optional. Fear creates urgency. Rescue creates patience. And patience, in the wrong context, becomes paralysis. Dependence rarely looks like helplessness. It looks like preparation without execution. Planning without commitment. Learning without application. Reflection without decision. People tell themselves they are being responsible. That they are gathering information. That they are waiting for the right moment. That they are being careful. But underneath that language, something else is happening. They are deferring authority. They are waiting for something external to say. Yes. Now. This is allowed. As long as authority remains outside the self, movement feels premature. Why act when something might intervene? Why commit when something might change? Why risk discomfort when reassurance is still available? This is how life becomes suspended. Not collapsed. Suspended. Many people are not failing. They are paused. And they do not know how to press play. Then something changes. Sometimes gradually. Sometimes suddenly. A job ends. A relationship dissolves. A support system weakens. A safety net quietly disappears. And the waiting no longer makes sense. At first, this feels destabilizing. Because without rescue, there is no buffer. No emotional handrail. No authority to lean on. No one to absorb the consequences of your choices. This is often the point where anxiety spikes. Not because life has become harder. But because responsibility has returned. Responsibility feels heavy when it has been absent. But if you stay with this moment, without immediately numbing it, something unexpected begins to happen. Relief. Because when no one is coming, expectation dies. And when expectation dies, disappointment loses its fuel. There is nothing to be let down by. No one to resent. No system to blame. No imagined figure who failed to show up. What remains is choice. And choice, while uncomfortable, is clean. Zero expectations create a strange kind of freedom. You stop performing. Stop explaining. Stop waiting to be understood. You no longer need approval to act. Because approval is no longer relevant. You are not being evaluated. You are being tested, by reality. This is the moment power quietly returns. Not as confidence. Not as motivation. Not as certainty. But as ownership. Ownership is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply assumes responsibility for outcomes. Most people believe authority comes from competence. It doesn't. Competence follows authority. Authority begins the moment you stop outsourcing decisions. The moment you stop asking, "What do others think I should do?" and start asking, "What do I judge to be necessary?" This does not make life easier. It makes it simpler. Choices become fewer. Noise reduces. Internal conflict softens. Not because uncertainty disappears, but because someone is finally in charge. And that someone is you. Many people misinterpret this shift. They believe self-reliance means emotional suppression. It does not. Self-reliance means emotional ownership. You still feel fear. You still feel doubt. You still feel discomfort. You simply stop handing those feelings to someone else to manage. This is why abandonment, reframed correctly, becomes liberation. The pain of abandonment comes from expectation. When you expect rescue and it doesn't arrive, the nervous system panics. But when you accept that rescue was never promised, panic gives way to clarity. You were never waiting to be chosen. You were waiting to choose yourself. This realization often arrives with grief. Grief for the version of life you imagined. Grief for the safety you assumed would last. Grief for the idea that someone else would eventually take responsibility. That grief is real. But it is also transitional. Because once it passes, something steadier takes its place. Ground. People who have experienced long periods without support often appear calmer. Not happier. Not fearless. Calmer. Because they have been alone with fear before. They know it does not destroy them. They know discomfort rises, and falls. They know reassurance feels pleasant, but is not required. They carry internal authority. And internal authority cannot be given. It must be earned. Modern systems are excellent at care. They are less skilled at withdrawal. But withdrawal is not abandonment. It is trust. Trust that the individual can carry more than they believe. Trust that friction will teach what explanation cannot. Trust that strength will emerge when space is allowed. The uncomfortable truth is that some forms of help feel compassionate, but quietly delay growth. They remove pressure too early. They explain pain before it transforms. They soften lessons before they embed. And so people gain insight without conviction. Awareness without authority. They understand themselves, but do not trust themselves. Confidence, despite what many believe, is not an affirmation. It is a memory. The memory of surviving difficulty without collapsing. The memory of deciding without permission. The memory of standing when no one intervened. Without these memories, reassurance must be repeated endlessly. And it never fully works. This is why encouragement fades quickly. Why validation requires constant renewal. Why people feel capable only while being reminded. The tragedy is not that support exists. The tragedy is that it often stays too long. Healthy support stabilizes. Then steps back. It teaches balance. Then removes the handrail. Modern support often hovers. Always available. Always interpreting. Always cushioning. The result is a self that never fully closes its own circuits. Always checking. Always deferring. Always waiting. There is a moment, quiet, uncomfortable, often avoided, when support must withdraw for strength to emerge. Most people do not reach this moment voluntarily. Life eventually forces it. And when it does, the shock can be overwhelming. This is why adulthood feels delayed for many. Not because people lack intelligence. Not because they lack empathy. But because the conditions that once forged maturity are postponed. Maturity is not kindness. It is capacity. The capacity to decide without consensus. The capacity to endure without rescue. The capacity to stand without witnesses. None of this means rejecting help entirely. Total isolation is not strength. It is deprivation. The issue is timing. Support must arrive late enough for adaptation to occur. Think of a muscle. If it is never loaded, it weakens. If it is overloaded too early, it tears. Strength forms in the narrow band between. Modern systems err toward protection. They assume vulnerability first. And in doing so, they sometimes create it. Many people feel this intuitively. They feel ashamed of their dependence, but cannot articulate why. They feel unprepared for pressure, but don't know how to train. They feel resentment toward systems meant to help them. This is not ingratitude. It is instinct. The instinct that says, I need to stand on my own, at least sometimes, to become solid. Solitude is not punishment. It is calibration. When noise is removed, something emerges. Your rhythm. Your judgment. Your standards. At first, this feels unsettling. Then clarifying. Then stabilizing. This is the gift hidden inside abandonment. Not loneliness. Authority. The strongest people are not those who were never helped. They are those who were helped. And then left alone long enough to discover themselves. If you feel weaker despite being supported, there is nothing wrong with you. You may simply be underchallenged. Strength is not built by being held forever. It is built the moment the hands let go. And you realize you can stand. That moment is frightening. And necessary. Not everyone needs it. But those who feel called toward it already know. They sense that comfort has become a ceiling. That reassurance has become a cage. That support, once helpful, is now limiting. For them, the path forward is not more explanation. It is measured exposure. Periods of chosen solitude. Decisions made without consultation. Discomfort endured without immediate relief. Not recklessly. Not cruelly. But deliberately. Because the goal is not suffering. It is capacity. No one coming to save you is not a curse. It is a return of authority. And once you accept it, quietly, without drama, you stop waiting. And begin living.